The words of those at the center of the tragedy 3 years ago in Boulder. And today a jury decided guilty. No insanity, no excuse, just plain guilty. 10 times over. Boulder King Soopers shooter is going to spend every minute, every day of the rest of his life in prison. He got 10 life sentences and another 1,300 years beyond that. As you just heard, the survivors and the victims' families waited 3.5 long years for that. There was no question all along that the killer was Ahmad Alissa. Jurors rejected his defense team's claim that he was insane at the time due to schizophrenia. The case has been stalled for years as doctors ruled that he was not competent to stand trial. But after years of delays, the case went from verdict to sentencing in just minutes. And from the moment that we heard that first guilty verdict read on account of murder, we knew there was going to be life for him. Judge sentenced him to 10 consecutive life sentences without parole and another 1,300 years for attempted murder and weapons charges. The judge acknowledged in court that there's no real blueprint for the judicial system to respond to mass shootings, but perhaps there should be.
When I signed up to be a judge, they had no instruction for us in this type of a case. And thankfully so, because one would wish that you wouldn't need instruction on how to do a sentencing in this type of case. But unfortunately, that day has come that we need to start training judges on how you address so many victims of such a horrendous crime.
Before the sentencing, the judge heard directly from the families of the 10 people killed in the shooting, a chance for them to speak publicly about what their families lost and to speak directly to what the killer did and did not do, both on that day and in the years since.
It bothered me when the defense attorney said there are no words when describing the pain and suffering. There are words, so many words to choose from, words that span language barriers. How about I'm sorry? If we've never been denying he did it, then where's an apology? An iota of remorse from the defendant or his family would have gone a long way.
That was Erica Mahoney, who you heard from a moment ago outside the courthouse. She spoke in remembrance of her father, Kevin, who she has long described as being love and light personified. The neighborhood dad, the Meals on Wheels volunteer. The Mahoney family spoken about the presence of love and light even in the worst moments, like when people rushed in to help others survive that shooting. Minutes ago, we heard Erica Mahoney say that she has been looking for that light in the years since she lost her dad, and that she has found it in the people, in the community, in the city of Boulder. Kevin Vaughn has been there each day of this trial, has gotten to know those families, and Kevin, I think oftentimes we're at a loss for words. But it's important to take the cues from the folks closest to this about what they say they want and need from our community and what they say that they have received, which is unequivocal love for years.
That's right, Kyle. There were a lot of little moments today, in addition to the time that some of these victims' families and some of the survivors spent talking. When the judge was reading the guilty verdicts and she read guilty on count 10, the death of police officer Eric Talley, his father was sitting just in front of me, and he slowly bowed his head and family members leaned in with him. And to see Bob Olds, who has been tireless in keeping the stories of his niece Ricky alive these last 3.5 years, dabbing at tears after the guilty verdict in her murder was read. And the last person that really made me think about what these people want and need in terms of hope for the future was an officer named Pam Gignac. She's a veteran of more than 40 years in law enforcement. She was the first officer at the scene. She was with Officer Talley when he was killed. And when it got to reading the verdict for attempted murder on her life, she sat very stoically, but the officer next to her reached over and slowly patted her on the knee in a gesture of comfort. And once it was all over, once this 3.5-hour hearing was over, there were a lot of hugs and some tears and a feeling that finally a lot of these people can take a step forward.
So I tried to get off my fear hat and said, get on my Nana hat and said, "Hi, honey. and I hear this scream, Nana, Daddy's dead. It cut my life in half. I couldn't even be a good Nana at that moment. I was just Eric's mom.
Kyle, that was just one of many, many emotional statements made in court today by survivors of those who died, and in some cases, people that were in the store and were shot out and barely got out alive.
You know, Kevin, there were the years of delays that dealt with the killer's competency, right? Could he understand what was going on in this trial? Before then, at trial, once that issue was overcome, it was the question of whether or not he was insane on that day. You were there. You heard the defense arguments. Did they ever have a compelling case that he truly was insane by the legal definition, or was it fairly open and shut and the jury came back fast?
Kyle, I talked to an attorney last week who's been following the trial, not involved in it, and he said to me, no jury is going to conclude this defendant was insane if his own lawyers haven't put on a witness to testify that he was insane. They called a lot of family members and some experts to say that he had schizophrenia, that he was seriously mentally ill, but none of them did a sanity evaluation on them, and they did not have an expert who testified at trial that he was insane on the day of this crime. So the jury was out, I think by our count, about 5.5 hours if you count when they started on Friday. That's pretty quick when you've got 55 criminal charges and another 38 sentencing enhancers.
That is striking. They asked the jury to reach a conclusion that they did not have an expert to support, and the jury did not. Guilty was the verdict. Kevin Vaughn, thank you for your work over the last couple of weeks. Before we step away for a moment, then rejoin you with the rest of Next. Please join us in a moment of remembrance for the 10 lives lost that day. A paramedic convicted in the death of Elijah McClain is going to stay out of jail while he appeals his conviction. A judge granted Jeremy Cooper an appeal bond today, shortly after another paramedic convicted in McClain's death had his sentence thrown out entirely, his prison sentence. Jeremy Cooper is the paramedic who injected Elijah McClain with ketamine back in 2019. Last December, a jury found him guilty of criminally negligent homicide, and a judge sentenced him to 14 months work release, 4 years probation. Cooper's going to remain free while his appeal plays out now. His next court date isn't until next January. McClain was walking home that night when he was stopped by police responding to a suspicious man call. He'd done nothing wrong, but he was put in a neck hold by police before being injected with ketamine. Earlier this month, paramedic supervisor Peter Chichuniak had his 5-year prison sentence vacated, converted to probation. The judge in that case cited exceptional circumstances for that rare move. Cooper's previously tried to have the same judge reconsider his sentence, but was denied. Are you getting ready to vote? Like making preparations? Perhaps doing some mild stretching, some calisthenics? Because there are 14 statewide ballot issues coming up in November, and those ballots hit the mail in 3 weeks' time. A couple of Next viewers, Karen and Roger and Rick and Janet, all reached out wanting to know what is up with Proposition 131. Tonight, politics guy Marshall Zellinger explains how 131 would seriously change Colorado's elections.
Shall there be a change, creating new election processes? That's the start of Proposition 131, the ballot issue that would do away with primaries as we know them, creating all-candidate primaries. And it would change general elections in November to ranked choice voting for elections involving members of Congress and state offices like governor and state representative.
All of that is in the Prop 131?
Yeah. We have heard from several viewers, like Denver voter Janet Maddox, seeking an explanation of Proposition 131. A yes vote creates one ballot for all primary candidates. A voter will choose one candidate, but the top 4 vote getters will advance to the general election regardless of party affiliation. A yes vote would also change how you vote in a general election. It would create ranked choice voting, where one voter can rank their choices of several candidates. However, just before the end of the legislative session this year, state lawmakers created a state law adding requirements that must be met before ranked choice voting can begin. At least 12 cities or municipalities must conduct ranked choice voting and then be audited. 3 of those municipalities must be in counties with large active voter populations, like Denver, Adams, or Boulder. 3 in mid-sized counties, like Pueblo or Mesa. 3 in smaller counties, like Summit. And 3 in the smallest counties, like Yuma. That puts into question when ranked choice voting would really happen. A no vote makes no changes to elections.
One of the things I always look at is who is behind something, who's paying for it, and who is it going to benefit the most.
Janet Kent Theory, the former CEO of DaVita, is behind this, and he's given $1.4 million to Colorado Voters First, the group created to campaign in favor of Prop 131. It has more than $8 million so far, with nearly $4.7 million from Unite America, a Denver-based nonprofit in favor of election reform, which does not disclose its donors. The No on Prop 31 group has raised $31,000 from progressive groups that also do not disclose their donors.
There's another money issue you should know about. If Prop 131 passes, the Secretary of State's office has said that it will likely need to raise some of these business fees to help reimburse counties for costs. The most common business fee at the top here is this $25 periodic report. We don't know which of these fees would actually increase, but this periodic report just went up to $25 from $10 where it was since 2006. And guess what, Kyle? The reason that went up to $25 was to reimburse counties for election costs. So it might have to go up yet again.
So proponents say this gets rid of a lot of the extreme partisanship. The opponents say this just brings in rule of the oligarchs, the wealthy business people. You don't know any of them that might want to be governor, do you?
Well, Kent Theory once wanted to become governor, and he's unaffiliated, and he's making these changes that hopefully he hopes voters will say yes to make it perhaps easier for an unaffiliated candidate to become governor.
Some might call that greasing the skids. Marshall Zellinger, thank you. Flip the box. Corey Reppenhagen's there. How about that through the magic of television? And look at that beautiful scene, Guanella Pass.
Yeah, you know, Kyle, I hope everybody takes an opportunity to recognize the beauty all around them and keep the energy positive this week. And Colorado does provide that. We are in peak colors. The aspens have turned gold, and I think they'll stay that way for all the way through this coming weekend and beyond, because we have some calm weather ahead. So we'll keep those leaves in good condition as we go through the week and ahead. I think my computer's a little frozen right now, so I'm going to walk over and get this thing into just kind of kick-started into action here. We're looking to tomorrow is going to be a great day to view those colors. We'll have a cold front come through overnight, and that will have some cloud cover here behind the front early tomorrow morning, but it looks like that's going to clear out by about noon, so we'll have mostly sunny skies and calm conditions after that front goes through. High temperatures about like they were today, maybe a little bit cooler just because of that front that came through. And then when we look at the 7-day forecast, we'll warm up even more. High temperatures could reach record territory here on Wednesday and Thursday, especially Thursday, but we're warm, dry, and sunny through the entire week. Get out and enjoy.
I pass along thanks tonight from the folks leading the Greeley-Evans School District and that community, because your generosity is going to help them feed a lot of hungry kids and their families in Weld County. Your latest Word of Thanks micro-giving campaign, between the one-time donations just this week and the monthly recurring gifts to the Word of Thanks Fund, they're going to provide more than $40,000 to stock the food pantries. They're going into every school in that district. Your $13 million in micro-giving has reached every corner of this state. If you have an idea of a nonprofit that we could help, you can now text NEXT, 303-871-1491, text NEXT, or email us, next@9news.com.
And I want to make sure that everybody is able to read and understand their ballot and vote in a way that's consistent with their values.
So Marshall's established this November ballot's going to be a big old beast, confusing even for people who speak English as a first language. When we return, the effort to make sure it's understood by everyone. Busting language barriers. Next. More than 80,000 eligible voters in Colorado feel more comfortable using a language that is not English. And for the first time in a presidential election, some Coloradans will have the option to vote in their own non-English language. Our Angeline McCall has that.
Each election marks change, and this time it will mean a change for more access.
And I want to make sure that everybody is able to read and understand their ballot.
Before Amanda Gonzalez became clerk and recorder in Jefferson County, she helped pass a bill 2 years ago.
That means that you can also go into a vote center and you're able to vote in English or Spanish and actually cast your ballot in the language that works best for you.
It's a requirement for all counties that have either 2,000 eligible voters who speak English less than very well according to the census, or if they make up 2.5% of eligible voters in that county. In Jeffco, voters can use a language accessible machine.
I think it tells somebody, that they matter when they're able to vote, when they're able to read and understand and cast their ballot in a way that they're certain reflects their values.
This election will mark the first with the requirement for all counties who meet the threshold.
And in a lot of communities, in a lot of counties, we simply weren't offering any resources in languages other than English. And according to the census, Colorado had more than 80,000 voters who were eligible to vote, but spoke English less than very well.
80,000 at the time when they passed the bill, who today could find more confidence in their own language when they go to the polls.
Every member of our community who's eligible to vote should have their voice heard.
Roughly 20 counties meet that threshold, including most all here in the metro area as well. It also means that there are sample ballots online in Spanish that voters can read through before going to the polls. And even if your county doesn't meet that threshold, there is a hotline available to anyone in the state where you can call and get connected to a service that will translate the ballot into any spoken language when you're there.
Into any spoken language. That's pretty wild. They must just have piles of polyglots laying around to help with that.
Well, into most widely spoken languages. So if you look at the bill, it depends on if it's widely spoken. But yeah, as far as when it comes to a language here in Colorado, if it's spoken, odds are that you can get help with that hotline.
That's pretty cool. I always love seeing like dozens of languages are spoken in Aurora alone. So that's really neat. Angeline, thank you.
Tonight's next question came to mind for several of you after our report last week on the license plate readers that scanned more than 2 million plates in Denver last month. Police are using them to crack down on auto theft. But what else can they do?
Hey, Kyle, my name is Tim, and I'm a City and County of Denver resident. Has the City and County of Denver considered or thought about using these readers to help identify those that are flouting the law and not registering their cars on an annual basis?
Sup, Tim? Thanks for the question. So here's the deal. DVD says, honestly, no. They said the cameras are strictly for the use of criminal investigations, and they can't be used for traffic enforcement on expired tags or missing plates. Honestly, it's the stuff that the humans at DPD have backed off doing in recent months. In May, the department announced a new policy stopping officers from pulling people over solely for low-level traffic violations like expired tags. Send us your next question, anything about Colorado that you are curious about because somebody else is wondering too. We welcome written, audio, video questions, however you like. Email next@9news.com or text next 303-871-1491. Marilyn, did you see Charlie Blackmon's retiring? Our partners of the Gazette say Chuck Nasty's going to call it a career. That man deserved better than a career with the Colorado Rockies. What a player, what a guy. Back with your feedback next. Feedback tonight from Jennifer, who says, wondering something about the Boulder King Soopers shooting case. How did his attorneys get paid? How much did this cost taxpayers? So obviously everybody is legally entitled to a defense and one provided for them if they can't afford it. And his defense attorneys were from the Colorado State Public Defender's Office, don't have a sum total on what they spent. Jennifer continues, I'm curious because the defense caused all the delays with the insanity theory and failed to prove it. Seems like they put undue stress and delays on the victims' families. Certainly they could have taken a plea early, but remember, the delays were due to competence. Could he understand what was going on today? Separate legal theory at trial about insanity on the day of the shooting, which today jurors rejected.